Hey, everybody. This is So Many Sequels, your book club for movies. I'm Josh.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm David.
Welcome to a new episode. It's kind of like an in between episode because it's not a new month yet. We're technically right at the very end of September when we're posting this. Hopefully, all things go to plan. Um, but we're going right in between Sports September and So Many Scares October.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we've got that coming up later this week. We're going to talk to you guys about Final Destination. So you got a couple days to watch that if you are watching this in real time before our review drops. So check that out. We're going to have horror movies all month long for you guys, picks from us, and we will be doing a fan vote again. So be sure to follow us on Instagram, so at So Many Sequels Pod on there to not miss out when we call for movies and when we post the polls so that you guys can vote and decide what our final scare of the month is going to be. Be sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app, whichever one you prefer. All right, it's been busy week, I guess, all around. So, what have we been watching? Have you guys watched anything new, or have you jumped early into Halloween? Anything like that?
If you count the fact that the Batman opens on Halloween, then I did
I
get an
guess you
early
could
start.
qualify it as a Halloween movie if you go that
It
way.
it's set on Halloween, the first night anyway, but,
You're
'cause I liked watched The Penguin last week and I liked it, and I was like, "Now I gotta rewatch The Batman." And
when
so but it's very hard to find time where I'm not interrupted, uh, these days. So I watched The Batman in 5 36-minute increments, and it did not take away my enjoyment. Still enjoy that movie. I won't say too much more about it. You can go listen to our
yeah.
podcast review of that from 2022, um, but yeah, that was fun. So that's how I'm kicking off my spooky season is with, Scary Riddler.
Well, how did it inform your viewing of The Penguin, though?
You know,
Without spoiling it, because I haven't watched yet and I want to.
a little bit because The Penguin does take place, I think it opens 7 days or so after the events of the Batman. So, it was a little bit of a nice refresher of, like, the immediate history before the show takes place.
Yeah.
And, it also just I mean, so Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobb or, the Penguin is featured fairly prominently in the movie, so you do get just kind of a a snippet of, like, what his life is like, and so you're getting a little bit more here. I will say, I did not notice you'll notice in the Penguin show that he does have a bit of a limp that makes him look like a penguin. Didn't notice it that profoundly in the movie, so I was
Mm.
wondering he did do it a few times, but he was never, like, in focus when doing it, so I was like, "Man, I feel like they're really exaggerating with it now in this show." But yeah, it's pretty I would say it was I had fun going back and watching it again.
Awesome.
But long gone are the days where I can plop down for a 3-hour film.
Right. Well, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to The Penguin. I wanna watch it. Hopefully, I can do that soon. Um, Garrett, TV? You been watching TV?
Yeah, TV and special series is whatever the limited series, I guess, is a better accurate representation of what these are. Have been really
Mhm,
all I've had time for. First of all, Josh, you and I watched the new Matlock pilot with Kathy Bates. Highly
mhm,
recommend it. I'm a huge Matlock fan. You could probably go find some old
mhm,
episodes where I've mentioned Matlock. I don't think it'd be that
mhm.
difficult to find. But
Yeah, after a
New
movie
podcast coming soon.
podcast and then a wrestling podcast, it's a Matlock podcast.
Mhm,
that
mhm.
is the order, dear, of
That is
references,
the
it
order,
seems.
and
Yeah.
then eventually gets down to, like, Conan O'Brien fan
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah. But it was really good. I was surprised at how they did it as a Matlock longtime watcher, and so I really recommend it. I don't wanna say too much because it's fun and I want people to go find it, but I do recommend it. Also had a chance to watch, again, going back to the wrestling stuff, the Mr. McMahon documentary
Yeah, I
series
haven't got to start this
on
yet, yeah.
Oh,
Netflix.
man.
Yeah. Listen, I watched wrestling a lot. I watched WCW. I watched the competition,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
so to me, it was really interesting to see the story that I grew up living in and hearing all of these other things, but I never hear it from the WWEF perspective. And so it was kind of interesting to hear it from there. It's nasty. I don't know what else to say. I felt gross watching it. It was uncomfortable. And
mhm,
I know most of these things. And listen, if you want to say that this is all a TV show, you want to lead into these characters, I'm fine. I'll give you that. Mr. McMahon as a
mhm,
TV character could be argued to be one of, if not the most vile, immoral,
Mhm.
disgusting human
Mhm.
beings in the
Mhm.
history of television. And
Mhm.
all I'm saying is if that were my representation for my whole life, I would do something
Yeah.
in my external life to make people wanna change that perception of me.
Really combat that.
And
Yeah.
all I'm saying is this man wanted people to think that this person was his actual persona,
Mhm.
thus it was. So, I can't a lot of the things were gross. It's terrible, but it's worth a watch just because
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes it difficult to support WWE as a wrestling fan, but also at the same time, there's not really anything else, and so it is a very weird situation, so I'm glad that,
It makes
it just reinforced my
so
lack of I really thought it was gross when I was a kid, and so it
Mhm.
reinforces, like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I have not got to start it yet, but I am really interested. I have seen WWE produce documentaries over time, and obviously there's a heavy amount of glazing that goes on with those of themselves. And so I'm interested to see how Netflix presents it because being young, being a kid, being in the moment and being sort of caught up in the entertainment of it, you're sort of you feel like you're in on it, so you're having fun, right? Going back and looking at some of these things, the best way to describe it is going back and looking at it with, like, sober eyes of an adult from the, like, a perspective outside of being in the moment. I have a feeling some of that stuff's not gonna look good, so I'm interested to see exactly how certain people's perspective of it is. They did most of these interviews before his most recent sexual assault allegations, and then the last episode was mostly filmed after those came out. So, per my understanding, some of the things that are said, you're getting a very interesting commentary from them because they kind of felt like they were bulletproof when they were saying them. And now there's new information that kind of changes. So, like, if they wanted to start this documentary after those allegations, probably wouldn't even got most of the interviews. So they got some sort of interesting stuff to work with. I've heard mixed feelings. I've heard some people say that if you're a longtime fan of WWE, you're not going to really get anything new. But I've also heard some people say that it was really informative for them. So I'm interested to see how Netflix presents it. They've got to deal with them. I've heard that there are people within WWE who aren't happy about it. I've heard people say that they didn't do anything. Like, what was the point? So very, what's the word? Polarizing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would agree that I don't think you get anything new out of it if you're a fan. I think it's more a matter of perhaps you realize that it's not just entertainment. And if you're
hmm
walking away thinking, "Oh, I didn't get anything new from this," I think you're missing the point of this is gross, and this guy is gross, and, like, what he's
That's
been doing for all of these
yeah.
years is just,
But
again, taking his real life and amplifying it in front of our
hmm
eyes so he can get away with it in real life. That's what he's done.
hmm
right. Because let me add in here as the outsider who has only tangentially seen, or is that the right word? I've only
hmm
seen it in the peripherals. Um, I grew up, my dad watched some WWE, so I've seen some of it. I've never watched it as a fan myself, but
hmm
even I know that Vince McMahon's um, character, his television character, is a piece of enormous shit.
yeah.
So if I know that as an outsider, it is concerning to me that anyone could watch a documentary on it and then just be like, "We already knew that." That is not okay.
Yeah.
No, but I
You
mean,
have
I think from their perspective, they mean that, like, if you are really plugged into like, you've heard about a lot of this stuff
You
before,
read the dirt
and so I
sheets.
think there are people are hoping that there's gonna be like, "Oh, man, they got stuff that no one's ever gotten before," and stuff that really puts this guy in the ground because like certain, you know, well-known egomaniacs, they get away with a lot, and they get away with
yeah.
a lot even when it's public. So, like, I think there were some people that were hoping that, like, there'd be some information shared that hasn't been shared before. There'd be something that could be a lot more damning because
Can we use our critical thinking skills a
people can
little bit
overcome
though
anything.
and wonder why the WWE would produce a documentary that would reveal some kind of new bad information about its creator? That's
Well,
just mind-numbingly stupid.
that's the thing. It's
Why
supposed
they would
so
not do
this one's
that.
not this one's supposed to be Netflix is what
Yeah,
was
but
how this
they're in bed
started.
with the WWE, you guys. Critical
Yeah, at
thinking
this point,
skills.
yeah. Yeah.
I do
They wouldn't
gosh,
do that.
it would be interesting to get your perspective on it as someone who is
I'm
involved.
intrigued.
Yeah, I think you should
Mhm.
I mean, up to you.
I'm
You
just
got
like,
but you could watch it. Maybe don't sit down and
look,
watch it the whole day like I did, but
well, I wouldn't binge it. I would pace it out. I'm just thinking, like, if Vince McMahon is a person who was interviewed in the documentary, then they were never going to tell the full truth.
Oh, he is a
Then the
Yeah.
full-on person, but
then he
again,
then he's a willing participant. Yeah.
it is very interesting some of the things that he himself says.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and,
'Cause
like
a lot of it's not even, uh, secret, like, information. It's pretty public,
yeah,
a lot of the bad stuff.
yes.
But I'm intrigued. I just wonder why people would expect anything different.
But what about you?
Um,
What have you been watching?
I have been watching some TV too, and I started my So Many Scares off, last night
Mm,
with a movie I found on Max called Urban Legend
I know
that
this.
came I didn't either, it just caught my eye.
Yeah.
It has a very odd, I think, cast for 1998. It had Jared Leto, and I didn't even recognize him. I had to look him up because it was like, "That little boy looks familiar." He was supposed to be in college, but he looked like a little boy to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, the concept is basically it's very I don't wanna say it's very similar to Final Destination, what we're gonna be reviewing first, but it caught my eye because it sounded like it was in the same, like, wheelhouse, and that was there is a serial killer, who is active around this college, and each death or each victim is murdered in the style of some, like, famous urban legend.
Mm.
So it was intriguing, and it's probably about as intriguing as it will probably get to you guys, because the movie wasn't, like, amazing.
Mhm.
It didn't I don't know that it really sold its own premise well, but it was a fun little Max movie, not HBO Max anymore. Um, but yeah, Jared Leto was in it. Um, there was like a Bloody Mary killing.
Ah.
There's somebody in the back seat killing, all
Ah.
that kind
Mhm.
of
Was it Hook on the Door or whatever?
gosh, I can't even
Is that
remember
that
all of
one?
them. I watched Urban Legends, and then I started a show on Netflix too, which is the second season of the Monster Anthology series. This one is about the Menendez brothers. The first season was the Jeffrey Dahmer show. You guys might remember that.
Mm.
And the Menendez, I won't repeat all the details for the audience, but for anyone who doesn't know, they're two wealthy, well-to-do brothers who in 1989 killed their parents, and it was a big national trial thing. It was very dramatic because there were accusations of sexual assault that came out during the trial, that they killed them out of self-defense. The first trial was a mistrial because of how polarizing it was, and then they ended up being tried again and sentenced to life in prison. And this show details the chunk of time leading up to the murders, and then some of the trial afterward. I'm still finishing it, but it's very interesting. And it's been very polarizing as well because there are a lot of people who are on the brothers' side and believe that they should be freed from prison because of the accusations against their parents. Are comparing it to Gypsy Rose Blanchard, if you guys remember that case from a little bit ago. She had murdered her mother, but she had been kind of held captive her whole life as this Munchausen by proxy
Mhm.
situation.
Wow.
So basically, they're like, well, she's free after killing her mother. Why aren't they free when they were also victims? And it's very, that's a touchy subject, is what I'm
Wow.
saying.
Mhm.
So very intriguing. Your mileage may vary with the show in terms of how you view the case. Everyone has their own view of the case and the accuracy of it, but it
Mhm.
is wildly entertaining.
Very interesting. I know the case, but I don't know the details very well. This is one of the I just know it from the outskirts. And so I think it would be interesting to know based on that little synopsis there because I did not know all of that. And so that has piqued my attention.
I
Yeah,
hope
I don't
this is a
know.
selling point, but
Yeah.
heavily in the soundtrack is Milli Vanilli.
Wow. I only know their one stolen song and their one Grammy taken away at.
Yeah, I don't know if this is still the case, but I know that a year or 2 ago, Gen Z got really obsessed with the Menendez brothers and thinking they were victims or victimized or something like that,
A few
that they
years
didn't deserve it.
ago, the Law& and Order franchise did a spinoff called Law& and Order: True Crime: The Menendez Brothers, and so
Mhm.
there's been another limited series about this that I think kinda kickstarted the re-interest, and then now Netflix is doing it. And there's a
Mhm.
documentary coming out here in the next couple weeks that is like an interview with them recently from prison.
Netflix knows when to get on the trends.
Very interesting stuff. So that's Monster, the Menendez brothers on Netflix is what I've been watching this week. All right, let's get into the news of the week here. We're going to talk about trailers a lot, but we do have to talk about one just really sad thing we want to acknowledge, which is the passing of Maggie Smith, great actress. I
Mhm.
believe she was 93 years old, incredibly long, storied career in life. Um, People our age are gonna immediately know her from Harry Potter, but she's done so much stuff. I
Mhm.
mean, even late into her life, she was still doing Downton Abbey. Like I said, the Harry Potter series. Some of us recognize her from Hook. It's a
Mm.
beloved movie for kids of our age.
Yes.
But also, I mean, this woman, she won 2 Academy Awards, 5 BAFTAs, 4 Emmys, 3 Golden Globes, and a Tony, as well as 6 nominations, for the Laurence Olivier Awards. She is one of the few performers to earn the Triple Crown of acting, which I had not heard of. That
Mm.
is when an actor has won a Tony, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar all for acting.
Mm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
she's definitely one of the best, greatest of all time. I mean, growing up, I recognize her mostly from Hook, and she has been the same age,
Yes, since '93.
1993. It has not changed
Yes.
this at all, one bit. She is wonderful. She is great. I do. There is a movie from the '70s, I think, called Murder by Death, and that was the first movie that I was like, "Oh my God, a young Maggie Smith!" And then it was proof. Sometimes there's no proof, but
Mhm.
she spans generations. She is truly one of the greatest.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video, on TikTok not that long ago, and they talked about Maggie Smith, who appears to have been playing a woman in her late 70s or 80s for a long time, and they said, "No, it's not just kinda true, it's very true." Like, she had the first movie, I think, is sometime in the '80s. There was a movie where she was 38 years old, and she's playing a 65, 68-year-old woman.
She played
She's
the
just kinda
long
had
game.
that look
She
for a
knew.
long time.
She knew. She said,
Yeah,
"People, they cast actresses aside if once they get a certain age. I'm gonna set myself up for the long game."
I'll just
yeah,
I'll get a
She's a
certain age early.
she's a genius.
yeah, and it's out in
Everybody
many ways
fights
for
to be
her,
young, but you want the young person to be old, and then you want the old person to be old. She's a genius.
Mhm. But, I mean, tons of great movies. Obviously, she was we have the new version of the Hercule Poirot movies. She was in the original ones where she's on, like, Death of the Nile and Evil Under the Sun and all that. So, yeah, great. She's, one of the best. Yes, a lot of people will remember her for Harry Potter, but hopefully if her passing does anything else, it makes you go and find other great films that she's done, and film television as well.
Yes, yes, indeed. Like I said before we started talking about Maggie Smith, we do have some trailers we're gonna talk about this
Mhm.
week. Some brand new trailers have dropped recently. First one we'll talk about pretty quickly is this Thunderbolts trailer from Marvel.
Mhm.
I will
Mhm.
tell the audience I am choosing not to watch it because I think it's too long, and I'm afraid it will spoil the movie for me and or make me uninterested in it, and I know I will stay interested if I don't watch it at all.
Yeah, that's a strategy.
So, that's my
Um
strategy. You guys go.
Garrett, I'll let you. I feel like you're gonna be less. You're gonna be more con. I have a feeling. I'll argue pro real quick and then let you contrast. But
Sure.
I think that this is one of those trailers. I did watch it. To me, feels like it's like they took the first act and like that's all the scenes are in the movie are from like the first act. It feels like one of those kind of situations
I hope
because
so.
the opening of the trailer is like the first minute and a half at least is basically just a shortened scene where you have Florence Pugh meeting David Harbour again, and so you kind of get like a bridged, I assume, a bridged version of their reunion as sort of the opening of this trailer before it kicks into what would be more of the splash and action traditional teaser trailer. So there's a little bit of splicing, but I would not be surprised if we get a thing later that says everything you saw in the opening thing is like the first it is only from like the first hour or the first 45 minutes of the movie or something like that. So interesting, a lot of action, a lot of characters. It'd be interesting to see how they balance out all these different performers. Garrett, what did you think?
I think it's got potential. I think
Mhm.
that my issue is, again, once you cross too many streams and everything starts to just feel so like oh my god, I gotta keep up with 97 different things again, and I gotta keep track with who's in here and why. And then a lot of times it
Mhm,
also depends on which stream is crossing. And I gotta tell you, the stream that they're crossing with the Thunderbolts, I don't care. And so it takes it down a little bit for me. But I will say I was at least like, oh, okay, this looks pretty interesting. I'll give them interesting. Um, but I think that's kind of where I landed is that it needs to win me over a little bit more before I
mhm,
put any kind of urgency in seeing it. Otherwise, I'll just let it go to Disney Plus and watch it there.
Yeah, typically Florence Pugh can sell me a ticket. I just really enjoy her work, so we'll see. I'm hopeful that the trailer. It's not like I'm gonna see it eventually
Yeah,
because the movie's
yeah,
gonna get forced down my throat eventually.
You
Uh,
got that AMC.
exactly. So it'll hit me. It'll get me. I'll just close my eyes or something maybe.
yeah.
But I'm excited for it. We've also got a couple new trailers for some spooky movies to talk about as we get into so many scares here. The first one I was new to me, news to
Mhm,
me. I hadn't even heard this was being like in development or anything. But this
mhm.
new Ryan Coogler movie called Sinner, starring Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld, looks very um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Intense.
Well, yeah, but I was looking for like cowboy vampire.
Cowboy
Mhm,
vampire.
mhm,
There's a little
mm,
cowboy vampire happening, right?
mhm. It is I think that sounds right. Um, Michael B. Jordan is playing a set of twins who I think are in the mid 1800s, maybe early 1900s, I can't really tell. The only thing I really know about the movie, other than the trailer looks, very spooky, very dark, very, but also with, like, some supernatural elements. I believe that it's supposed to be vampires, but the trailer doesn't really steer you towards vampires, so I don't know if that was, like, a rumor or if that's just something that was that I heard and was not true. But yeah, I mean, Michael B. Jordan's great. Ryan Coogler, as they prominently say in the trailer, director of Creed and Black Panther, so it's coming with a certain level of, if you like those movies, there's a chance you might like this.
Yeah, I don't know much about or outside of what you 2 said, other than I
Mhm,
watched the trailer and I'm down. I mean, give me it. I'll watch
mhm.
it right now.
Yes, agreed. And then finally, there's a teaser for Wolfman, which I also didn't know was happening because it had been a few years since Universal had made The Invisible Man, which was kind of their latest attempt at bringing back the original Universal monsters. And then we got this Wolfman teaser. Garrett, you're the Universal Monsters guy
Mhm,
on this
mhm.
show.
Yeah.
So let's hear some reaction. What do you think? Are you hyped for the Wolfman?
I think I am. We talked a little bit off mic about there have been several different kinds of reboots, and I remember early 2000s, they tried to do another one with Anthony Hopkins. That's the only actor that I
Mm.
remember in it. There's a chance Benicio del Toro was in it, I think David mentioned.
Oh, I think yeah, that might have been I don't know when that one came out.
But I remember it not be it was very underwhelming, and that was when everything was such into CGI, and everybody was just
Yes.
really
Yeah.
focused in, like, computer let's see how, like what crazy stuff we can do with the computer generated
Mhm,
graphics. And this trailer looks like they are blending and leaning towards the practical side. And the Wolfman is scariest at a body horror kind of thing. It can be scary as a wolfman and all of that stuff, but
mhm,
if you don't do the transformation right,
Yes.
it's just gonna take you out of it. That is the most important part of the wolfman is the change and making you feel that as they're
mhm,
changing because that sets the tone. And then it can be as violent as you want because you've already got that sense of tingly and gross, and it just enhances
mhm,
that feeling, and if you're sucked out because it looks like he transformed into a fake wolf, it's not gonna do anything, but that reality that this looks like it brings, I think it's really gonna enhance it, and so I trust Blumhouse, I trust what they're doing with it, so I think that this could be a good way to bring these in, and I'm here for a revamping of all of these monster movies if they do them correctly. You go back to that Tom Cruise Mummy one, that one wasn't done correctly. You really have to think about
yeah,
these, and if you're gonna bring them back, there's a chance you have to, like, think, "How
mhm,
can we do this for the first time?" Back in the day, it was practical
mhm,
effects, and they didn't have the CGI, and so the scares aren't necessarily holding up as well, but now we have a blend. You can do practical effects, you can do CGI.
mhm,
You just have to do
mhm,
them right, and you have to do them well,
mhm.
and I really am hopeful that this one looks like it's gonna do that for Wolfman.
Yeah, so the trailer itself is very atmospheric. It's very intensely edited. I don't believe you really get like any sort of clear visual of what this Wolfman will look like outside of maybe their arm or uh, maybe their back at one point. The big takeaway, the director on this also directed Invisible Man, as you mentioned, Josh, and it's from Blumhouse. I think what made The Invisible Man work as a reboot is that they focused the story on the person who was being terrorized. You did not follow the Invisible Man through their journey. And I think if they do that similar thing here and you're not be following the Wolfman around as he goes from town to town or doing whatever, if you're centralizing it on his family, his wife, his son, his daughter, whatever, and like they are having to deal with what's happening to them, and he's the Wolfman and he's terrorizing, he's a monster in the shadows situation. I feel like then there's potential to work there. But having the Wolfman be the main character, I don't know. That's an element I think that doesn't necessarily work with that Anthony Hopkins, Benicio del Toro one, is that the main character is the Wolfman. And so, like, if you have the Wolfman's perspective, it's like, oh, well, I know he's not a bad guy. I see him when he's not a bad guy. I don't know if that makes sense
No,
or
I
not,
think it
but
does.
character is important. And if you have a monstrous character, you need to have people you don't want the monster to get. You have to have somebody that you're rooting for in the movie. So if they can nail that, then I think they can nail this.
Yeah, the premise that I see listed, doesn't give too much, but it does say, San Francisco man Blake inherits his childhood home in the remote Oregon wilderness following the presumed death of his estranged father. With his marriage to Charlotte fraying, he convinces her to visit the property with their daughter. At night, the family is attacked by a werewolf and takes refuge inside the farmhouse where Blake begins to undergo a monstrous transformation. Sounds
There
interesting.
you go. There
Definitely.
you go. So I mean, if they can pull that off, I'm optimistic.
I am too.
I'm more optimistic than I have been in a while.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about, again, this being from the director of Invisible Man, this being from Blumhouse. I think it should be pretty interesting. I was looking up the kind of where it began its life a little bit, and this particular iteration was pitched by Ryan Gosling, apparently. And
Hmm.
he was attached to Star up until last year when he and some others left the project. But it looks like, if I'm reading correctly, he still maintains executive producer status on this. So
Nice.
very interesting that this came from a pitch from him, of all people.
I dig it.
I want to redo the
Just
Wolfman.
super random. But yeah, that's Wolfman. All right, let's wrap things up here. David, why don't you give us the quick box office rundown of this week?
Well, it was a pretty good week at the box office, all things considered. There were a lot of new movies in theaters this weekend. There were a lot of old movies in theaters this weekend as well, but let's focus on those new movies because debuting at number one is The Wild Robot, which brought in $35 million. This is a DreamWorks new film. I actually think this looks really good. I'm interested to see it. It exceeded studio projections and it exceeded my estimate. I was thinking 25 million was going to be its ceiling, but it goes up to 35 million. So a pretty good opening weekend for DreamWorks at The Wild Robot. And then at number two, Beetlejuice falls to number two, bringing in 16 million. Transformers is at number three with 9.3. Bollywood film, Devara Part 1 here in the US brings in 5.6 million. And then Speak No Evil rounds out the top five with 4.3. Of note, you may or may not have seen this talked about on Threads, but Megaopolis, director Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah.
debuts with $4 million even, which is about where I thought it would be. I kind of said between 4 and 7 at sort of the highest. So anyway, been a highly polarizing movie that I've seen online. A lot of different opinions about this movie.
Yeah,
So,
don't go
have
see it.
either of you got a chance to go see it?
No,
Looks like
I'm not.
ass.
I'm not gonna. It sounds like he has been problematic on set, and so
Yep.
I'm not
Yes
gonna
to all that.
I'm not gonna go give it my money.
Okay, interesting. I wondered. I'll shout out a few other things. My Old Ass debuted
Now that
in
is an
more
okay
theaters this
ass. You should
weekend.
watch that.
Yes, so that brought in 2.2, and it's sort of expansion weekend. It's in about 1,000 more theaters this week than last. And then the Substance that Josh reviewed last week that is at the number 10 spot with 1.8. I'll also mention that Howl's Moving Castle is back in theaters. That did okay over the weekend. We've talked about some re-releases recently, like Coraline earlier this year. So if you get a chance, Howl's Moving Castle, very popular Studio Ghibli film. Anyway, that's it for the box office this week.
Sweet. Well, we've got October coming up for so many scares, so get ready for our month of horror movies. Then we're moving into November with a new theme we're gonna test out, 1999 Vember. It's going to be the best movies of 1999. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see if they're the best.
Oh, probably not.
So it's one of the best years in movies, so we
It's
felt
true.
we could throw darts at the wall and still pick good movies. So we're gonna do that, for November, and then for December, we're gonna get into So Many Santas and
Mhm.
celebrate the holiday season like we do every year. Lots to look forward to. So thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcasting app. If you want to get more involved, you can join our Patreon, which gets you access to our Discord community and other cool perks. Remember to follow us on Instagram at So Many Sequels Pod. Follow us on Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the show and update you on all things that are going on here. That's it for today. So we'll see y'all next time.